I am pleased to introduce Reverend Lise Hildebrandt, who is the co-convener of the Creation Care Justice Network. Did I get the name right? Excellent, in the Diocese of Massachusetts, and is in the beginning stages of planting a creation care based church in the diocese. Welcome, Lisa. I'll let you introduce yourself as you see fit.
Okay, thank you. I am so glad to be with you all today. And as Rowan said, I wear two hats. And so I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit about both of these ministries, the Creation Care Justice Network, and also this new church community that I am trying to plant or give birth to. And then afterwards, I'd like to lead you through a little guided meditation as a kind of an example of some of the work I'm trying to do, and then have a little bit of time for questions. So that's what I plan to do. And I'm going to share my screen with a couple of slides. Hope this works. So let's see. All right. And all right. So first of all, to tell you a little bit about the Creation Care Justice Network, or the CCJN, the Diocese of Massachusetts has had a group that was focused on creation care for 10 or 15 years. And a lot of the work was spearheaded by Bishop Bud Cederholm. A couple of years ago, we did some reorganization, and I have been the co-convener for about 2.5 years. We hold an annual retreat every January, which is really a way for us to regroup and also invite new people who want to be part of our working groups. And this year we reorganized into 3 working groups. One is on spiritual practice and grounding, one on action and advocacy, and one on communications and networking. Spiritual practice and grounding is really for us to help provide resources for people to have worship that is creation centered, and also to have active prayer and spiritual practices that help ground us in creation and help us deal with climate change. Action and advocacy, these are about what kinds of activities and habits you can take on in your congregation and your community to address environmental degradation and climate change. And advocacy is how you do systemic change at your local, state, or national level. And so that may be signing petitions, it may be showing up at protests, it may be holding worship and prayer witness in a public place. All kinds of ways that we as faith people can show up. And the final one is communications and networking. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out, and we also are trying to connect more and more with people in the diocese, in the state, and people in other organizations who are doing this kind of work. And another thing that happened this year was our diocese has invited the Reverend Dr. Margaret Bullitt Jonas of the Western Diocese of Massachusetts to be our creation care advisor. So that's becoming a very fruitful relationship. And last fall, the CCJN put forth a resolution for our convention asking the bishops to make a climate emergency declaration. The resolution passed in our November convention, and in March, the 3 bishops of, so Bishop Allen and Bishop Gale from the Diocese of Massachusetts and Bishop Doug Fisher from Western Massachusetts gave a climate emergency declaration, which is very thoughtful and very powerful. And since then, we put together climate emergency webinars for our two dioceses working together. So more and more, we're going to be working together as the whole state, Episcopalians in the whole state. So that was really wonderful. We had 4 of the webinars and the area of pray, learn, act, and advocate. So how you can respond to the fact that climate change is real, it's happening, it's getting worse and worse. How do you respond as faith communities, both to the effects of climate change and also to the causes of climate change? So it was really just to put some stuff out there to help people start thinking about this. And we are now talking about how to do follow-up and how to support congregations in this work. So here are some resources. At the end, I'll put these in the chat. We have a web page connected with the diocesan website. If you'd like to sign up for the newsletter or be part of the network, we have a way to do that. And also, if you're interested in what the bishop's climate declaration was, we have a link for that. So that's a very brief run through of Creation Care Justice Network. And now I'm going to change hats and tell you a little bit about this new community that I feel really called to help create. I call it Green Church, but I don't think that's its real name. It's like, that's a kind of a placeholder until the real name emerges. But what's obvious to me is it really needs to be all about relationships. Primarily our relationship with God in and through creation. And I very strongly feel that the God who created everything is present in everything, and that we have kind of forgotten how to relate to the world around us. It's about building relationships in community around creation, but the building up a new community of maybe ideally both church people and not previously church people, and collaborating with other people and other groups to address climate change. My focus is definitely on embodied spiritual practice. And what I mean is, if we want to change our relationship to creation, we also need to do it with our whole bodies. And I'll say a little bit more about that later. And the other thing is, it's really obvious to me that part of my call is to help us really connect with the soil, with growing food and restoring habitat. These are hands-on ways of building our relationship to creation and doing something really positive in the face of not only lots of social problems, but also climate change and climate destruction. So that's a little bit of kind of the thinking or the calling behind my work. And I'm just going to quickly introduce you to a few of the things that we've been doing. So for Lent, I put together a 6-week series called Love and Lamentation for Creation. These were outdoors. They were focused on one aspect of creation, like air, water, soil, and were really a way of us both celebrating how amazing each of these things is as created, but also grieving over the ways that we have despoiled them. So we had 7 to 12 people show up at each one. They were in different parks in and around Arlington. And I also made the resource available to other households in the diocese. So if people wanted to do them in their own houses or homes outside, they were available for them to do that. So it was kind of fun. It was very experimental, and sometimes cold and sometimes windy and rainy. one of the people on my discernment team is a member of Good Shepherd Watertown, and she's a horticulturalist. And at this church, they normally have a vacation garden school, but this year they weren't going to. And Allison said, well, why don't we take over the gardens, and why don't we bill it as gardening as spiritual practice? And I just jumped right in there and said, that sounds great. So we started on May 2nd. And at the left picture, you can see there were lots of weeds and things in the gardens, and we had to remove and add compost and nutrients to the soil. And then, as the two parishioners on the right were doing, we're planting. And so we get together and we do some prayer, we do some hands in the garden work, and we usually do a reflection on scripture and a sharing of our lives. And this last Tuesday, we had our first harvest. You can see on the right, we had radishes, lettuce, two kinds of lettuce, some pea shoots, kale, and some herbs. And on the left, Allison is explaining to Marilyn how you can tell that this is a really extraordinarily healthy lettuce. So it's just a delight. We are a small group, but we will be meeting weekly over the summer and into fall to pray, reflect, and harvest food that is given to the food pantry. And yes, this is very much like the Good News Gardens, which is also going to be explained later on today. And the other thing, Kathy Venkatesh on the right is also a priest in the diocese, and she's on my discernment team. She has a heart for restoring habitat so that it helps support pollinators and other wildlife, and also good human life. And so to celebrate the start of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, which was June 5th, we went to a park and engaged in prayer, and she told us about the area, about the plants that were growing there, and about the respect that we need to have to all plants, even the garlic mustard, which we were pulling out because it's a plant that will take over and crowd out native plants, and it can also poison the soil. So we cleaned out a little patch. Wasn't a great huge amount, but you know, again, building community, building relationship with the plants in the area, and praying. It's just great stuff. So these were the results. We had 7 bags worth of weeds that we pulled. We opened up space for other plants to come in. And again, it's about learning, it's about relationship, it's about prayer. So what next? We're looking at doing some more restoration practice late summer into fall, and maybe trying to connect with families in the area. I feel really drawn to the idea of helping people change their lawns into either gardens or meadows, habitat for pollinators and other wildlife. We'll see. It's still very much growing something. It's a lot about discernment and seeing where God's Spirit leads. I've applied for a grant from the New Episcopal Communities. I've been doing all of this out of the goodness of my heart, but it's not financially sustainable. I've planned all along to be working part-time in a parish, and it's just taking that a while to develop. But in conversation with a congregation that I might be serving at the same time as doing this work. For me, embodied practices are really important, that we use our whole bodies as we are doing this work. And that includes anti-racist practice. And continuing to work both with to develop a local community and also to work with other communities in the diocese. So I was thinking of leading you all in a little meditation, because that's, again, connecting with our bodies is something I think is hugely important. And as Episcopalians, especially, we are used to looking at a book and worshiping with our brains. And again, anything that we can do to really expand the way we worship, to engage our whole bodies, for me is really worth doing. And many of these practices have been in the church for centuries, so it's nothing new. And some of them are kind of exploring new ways. And I also wanted to say something about bodies. You know, our popular culture has taught us that bodies are bad, and especially that women's bodies are considered dirty or shameful or just not good enough. And I think also the church has echoed that, and it's and maybe not only, you know, I mean, kind of suspicion about bodies in general, but especially, you know, non-cis male bodies are somehow not quite right. And so to connect to creation, I think it's important to develop practices that celebrate our bodies, and also to reclaim our feminine wisdom and nurturing, which isn't to say that male bodies can't do that too, but it's just a way that I think is really important to be there. And it's important for us to develop practices that counter white body oppression, which really emphasizes greed, domination, extractive consumerism, and racism. Because all of those kinds of things lead to devaluing many, if not most, human bodies, and many, if not most, plant, animal, and other created bodies. So, and the final thing is, if we are to do this really incredibly hard ongoing work of dealing with climate change, restoring Earth and our right relationship to others and creation, we need to be really well grounded spiritually and community. So that's, again, why I think this is so important. So now I'm going to stop sharing. We'll come back to that. And I'm just going to use a few minutes. Yeah, I think I have a few minutes to try to lead you in a guided meditation. If you want to turn off your video, you can do that. But I invite you to sit comfortably in your chair or stand up if you would prefer. But put your feet firmly on the ground and sit or stand tall. Make your spine straight. We'll start with 3 long breaths in and out to ground us. I would invite you to take a breath in on 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and exhale for 4 counts. And if you'd like to, you can also gesture with your hands. So when you are taking a breath in, hold your hands up, hold for 4, and then push your hands down and out for 4. So let's do this together. Take a breath in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Now I invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze. And imagine that your hands are holding a clump of rich, fertile soil. What does it look like? What color is it? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Healthy soil contains minerals, sand, clay, ground up rocks. It contains organic matter, decomposed plants and animals, and it teems with life, billions of small animals, insects, and bacteria. It is an amazing creation. You're holding this thing full of life in your hands. Now imagine what Jesus said. The life force of God is like healthy soil. If you throw some seeds on it, even if you go away and don't do anything more, the soil itself causes the seeds to sprout, grow, blossom, and produce grain. All you have to do then is come back at the right time and harvest this bounty. Now imagine that you are this healthy soil, that your body itself is this vessel for the power of God's life force to come in and create an amazing harvest. Your body teems with life and possibility, for God is present in it, the God who loves it and created it. I invite you to remember a time, an event, or an experience when your body, propelled by God's life force, produced something wonderful and life-giving. Maybe it was the miracle of pregnancy when you brought to life a child, or you nursed that child with milk your own body produced. Maybe it was something that you produced out of your own hands and muscles, building a structure, making a home, creating a garden, artwork, music, executing the perfect soccer kick. It might have been something that your voice and energy produced, an organization, a space for healing, a program, a justice movement, a celebration. What wonderful thing has your inspirited body brought forth? Feel the joy of that creation. How was God or God's Spirit present to make that thing miraculously happen? And what community supported its birth and growth? For we never do these things in a vacuum or by ourselves. Give God gratitude for your body, perfect and imperfect, yet able to produce such a gift. Wonder for a moment what new seed might be planted in your soil, what God might still be up to in your very precious and delightful body, your deep and healthy soil. Let us praise and thank the God of our creation, our God who loves us, sustains us, and supports us. We are yours, God. Use us. Amen. And finally, I'm just going to, again, share my screen. This is my contact information, which I will also put in the chat. And so if you have any interest about more of Green Church or the Creation Care Justice Network, actually, if you're interested in either, you can reach out to me, but we also have a formal new email, creationjusticeepiscopalma@gmail.com. And the Creation Care Justice Network is now expanding to encompass the entire state of Massachusetts, both dioceses. So if there's time, and Rowan, you can let me know if there is, I could entertain a few questions.
I think there is. If there are any questions for Lisa, please feel free to unmute and ask away.
I was curious about your discernment team. Could you say more about that?
Yes, so I have been working with the New Episcopal Communities group out of the National Church. And one thing they make very clear is there's no way that you can start a new community without having a community. And so they want you to get a team together. And since I've been in very early stages of this, I thought what I need most of all in the beginning is a team of other people to help me discern what I'm doing, what God's call is. So I have 5 people. 2 are clergy. One is United Church of Christ. One's Episcopal. I have 3 lay people from the Episcopal Church. And we get together monthly. We had been getting together by Zoom, and now we get together in person and spend about an hour and a half talking about kind of where things are, where the Spirit's moving. And it's just a wonderful thing. We pray. We also pray together, and we usually do scripture reflection. So just an amazing group of people. One is this horticulturalist who's so incredibly passionate about soil and growing things. One has a passion for habitat restoration. One does therapeutic nature work with disadvantaged populations. One has a focus on families and children. So it's just really a rich community that has been so wonderful to work with.
Does your community have a place where you can dispose of the weeds that you pulled out of that area that you were reclaiming?
Yes, we were working with the town of Arlington, and there's a person that coordinates the parks, and the weeds were going back to the city, and I believe they have I don't know whether they were going to go into commercial composting or not. I kind of didn't follow that chain down, but they provided us the trash bags and the gloves if needed, although we all had our own gloves, so we didn't need them.
I'm just curious because knowing that some communities do that, they have, the large composting areas or places to have clean fill, wondering why they would use plastic bags and not paper bags.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good question. And I think I will definitely follow that up. This was our first chance, so there's always a time to improve on
a learning curve.
Well, yeah. Also, I know that you don't usually, in an invasive species, you don't want to put them in regular compost, like, because we have huge compost bins at my community where I live. But, you need to have commercial composting for that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's why I was curious about that, because if we were, in a place where we wanted to start up something like that, how we would handle the waste that came out.
Right. Well, those are good questions. And, it's a learning curve for everybody, and there's always lots of room for improvement. So I appreciate you bringing that to mind, and we'll ask that on next time, or we'll provide our own paper bags if we can.
And I want to say thank you for your work, for your care for creation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. I was also interested in if you would, as I've adopted the term from Lois, elevator speech for how you encourage people to not have lawns, and in particular, how you encourage them not to use weed and feed.
Yeah, well, this is, as I say, this whole thing has been evolving. So it's only, I mean, I have been kind of really thinking about I've been thinking about lawns and kind of what, what a trap they are and not a really good use of the land for a long time, but I haven't formally done anything in this area yet. I am talking to other people in the town who are interested in this area, but I don't think the town has done anything concerted. But I mean, for one thing, lawns, as we usually do them, are a lot of work, and they use up a lot of water, and they use up often a lot of poisonous chemicals. So, I mean, as people of faith, we want to take care of God's creation. We want to put it to good use. We need to be much more conscious of what we're doing. So I think part of it is just saying, hey, wouldn't you want something that produces something wonderful, either food for human beings who are hungry, or food for animals and pollinators, that they need and they're not going to get from grass. The other thing is, don't you want to work a lot less hard? And don't you want something that's beautiful and shows the diversity of creation? So, I mean, I think there are lots of ways of addressing this, and I'm really excited about the chance to go in this direction. But we will see. Again, it's all discernment, and it's all unfolding.
Sure, thank you. We don't use weed and feed at our house. We have one of the lawns that has all the natural things in it. It gets mowed, what is in a garden, but I don't really know. All our neighbors have these green grass that they water, and it's a little disturbing to me, but I don't know how to talk about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I need to learn that.
Yeah, so do we all. So stay tuned. I'd really love to develop that. And I think there's the kind of the faith perspective and the not faith perspective. But even when I'm talking to people who aren't from the faith background, I talk about the real spiritual connection that is really important. And the other thing that we know is people who are tending gardens and who are out in nature have much better outcomes in terms of mental health and also physical health. And so there's also a way of saying, let's use this as a way to get our young people engaged and doing something really positive. And of course, oh yeah, by the way, we don't want to expose our children to chemicals and things that are degrading of bodies and wildlife.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So I'm sure I've gone to my time, so I would I will cede the floor, but I will put those connections in the chat.
Perfect. We're saving the chat.